Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Network and Chill. I'm your co-host, Chris Red, joined today with Ricky Mason, and we are excited to have a special guest with us today, Alex Reed. Alex formerly was led the global marketing team at Big Ass Fans, which was acquired back in 2017 for 500 million. He later became the co-founder and CMO of Truman's, which was also acquired, and now he is the chief commercial officer at Vsimple. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Ricky. Excited to chat with you guys today.
What's up, man?
Good to see you all.
Likewise, man. It's been too long. I think we've both been busy since over the pandemic and working on new avenues. But it's timely. We've been actually looking forward to getting you on the episode. And today we really wanted to talk about a little bit about startup mergers, acquisitions, and exits. And we thought that, some of your insights and expertise in the past would be a great person to give advice to startups and founders in this ecosystem. But I gave a brief background on you, but give us the evolution and kind of your pathway into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the introduction. Everything was spot on. I mean, I got really got to drink from the fire hose at Big Ass Fans. For those who don't know the backstory there, it was an extremely entrepreneurial business, founder led from day one, bootstrapped from day one. And the CEO, for some unknown reason, took me under his wing as an intern there. So I actually started while I was still in school. Got to learn a lot and got way more responsibility than any 20-year-old kid should have been given, which was cool because the idea of entrepreneurship has been floated a lot. And, I hear that discussed and the merits of it and the challenges. And Big Ass Fans really was the embodiment of that, where if you showed the initiative, the interest, the curiosity, and the willingness to take risks, that you were often given, big opportunities. So really quickly, I say moved up there, but it's kind of a joke because the company evolved so much. It was 25 million top line when I started, 250 there towards the exit. So it was a totally different business by the end. And so really everybody was moving up and getting opportunities and taking on more responsibility. But it did a couple really interesting things. I started in marketing, very kind of textbook, marketing in terms of direct marketing, events, comms, things like that, really sharpening the skill set. Then got to launch and run our first consumer product line, Haiku, which was cool because I had no B2C experience at that point. Got to figure it out in partnership with a phenomenal team, including the founder and CEO and a former Tempur-Pedic early executive. So we got to use a little bit of that playbook. And then parlayed that into a role really running global marketing and comms for the whole business, which culminated in that exit. I got to work with John Bostock, who would later be my co-founder at Truman's, on that exit, which was a lot of fun because he was brought in specifically as the first COO of the company with the goal of restructuring and getting that business ready for sale. So not only had I had a crash course for the past decade in marketing and product management and comms, but now I was getting a front row seat. Well, not even just a seat. I got a role in this 5-person deal team to help lead the business to a successful exit. Which was a fantastic learning experience and a good outcome, not just for me personally, but for the entire organization, because there was a lot of employee stock in that business, from the C-suite to the production team. There were people who participated in that, so it was a cool story, and I'm seeing more of that happen now too, which is fantastic. Where you're getting employees involved in these equity programs, and then John and I, we enjoyed the kind of breakneck speed of Big Ass Fans and the experimentation and, going into a private equity, owned company now, it was not that. And so we both started thinking about what we wanted to do on the other side, which was ultimately the genesis for starting our own business. And, we grew that up and we had a quicker exit than we thought we would from that. That was Truman's, a direct-to-consumer cleaning products company, which we sold the intellectual property for, and we can get into the difference there. So it wasn't a complete sale, it was an asset sale to a strategic company. And then After that, I sort of hung out and advised some companies for a year or so, and then joined up with the team at Vsimple as their chief commercial officer. Another early stage business, first foray into tech, although we're selling into industries like manufacturing, distribution, construction that I know really well from my background, and just always interested in the puzzle-like nature of businesses. And I think when you're in early stage, it's like that 5,000 piece puzzle where everything's scattered and there might be one or two pieces put together, but you've got to figure out the rest. That's just innately interesting to me, as I think it is to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, man. And I want to say I second like the culture of like big ass fans, like from being a student, watching the company grow to working at the university and having students like intern there. Like the opportunity, just like you said, like you all open the doors for students and interns to try, new things, like work on projects if they kind of had an idea. I feel like Big Ass Fans was one of the first like startup feels, like cultures that I felt in Lexington, while I was, in undergrad, but like just feeling that like that entrepreneurship, like you all supported that and really backed, those people. Like that was, I witnessed it from like my students and some of my classmates.
Yeah, there was not in an ageist way, but there certainly was a bias towards youth because I think the inexperience gave you a higher risk tolerance. If you haven't failed, you don't have a fear of failing. If you don't have, all of this career that you're protecting, you're more willing to take those risks. And so the average age was probably 30. And you had a lot of people in seats that if you were going into a more mature organization, you just wouldn't see. It's like, no, you got to have 15, 20, 30 years experience to do this sort of thing. And it was that rare confluence of, innovative technology, dynamic founder, like youthful organization. And I mean youthful from an approach standpoint, not necessarily from an age standpoint, that I think that potion created magic for the business. And you're right. I mean, there was a magnetism within Central Kentucky where lots of people wanted to work there or get involved with the company in various ways. And I'm excited for more of that to happen in our region, and I know it will.
I love that. And you mentioned like you got into the kind of the early stages where you mentioned John coming on as COO and really a deal team getting put in place at Big Ass Fans. Kind of talk about that acquisition, right? How did that even come to the place? How did the founder and team there at Big Ass Fans start looking towards the acquisition and putting together a deal team internally in order to position yourself for the acquisition?
Yeah, and I mean, I can't speak on behalf of Kerry Smith, the founder, and what was going through his head. I'm sure there's tons of emotions when you start thinking about walking away from the past 20 years of your life. But I do know that businesses are different at each stage. And I think what he was passionate about was the explosive growth, the R&D, the taking big swings and risks. When you get to be, a couple $100 million and 1,000 employees, there is a defense element to that of protecting what you've built, ensuring security for the employees. It's no longer, even if you want some cultural aspects to remain, it's not the 10, 15, 25 person startup that it once was. And I think that just candidly became less fun for him and less interesting. And so he started to explore different opportunities that weren't all complete exits, but I think he knew himself well enough to say, I'm either all in on this or I'm all out. And so once that decision was made, it was, okay, how do we position this for the best possible outcome? Not just for him as an individual. Like I said, he'd been very generous with stock for a lot of employees. So we wanted to maximize shareholder value in that exit. And this is where a ton of credit goes to John. There was a team in place, but John was really the quarterback, the architect who put the vision together. Because when somebody's buying a company, yes, they're buying what's there today, but they're also buying what can it be. And John, I think it's a disservice to say he put a great story together because there is a narrative to it, but there has to also be a lot of substantiation, a lot of data. And for folks who might not be familiar with M&A of deals of that size, this was probably a 16-month process from, hey, let's engage a bank like a Credit Suisse or a Goldman Sachs to go out and look for some potential buyers, all the way through to that closing deal. I mean, you're talking a year to a year and a half from kickoff to close. And that, for us, the deal team specifically looked like about 9 months where I was wearing my hat as the head of marketing for probably 50% of the day, and then my hat as deal team for the other 50%. So as you can imagine, extremely stressful, very involved, lots of highs and lows. But like I said, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything in the world.
I love that. I mean, I even laughed at an article I read about Kerry Smith, in Inc. magazine that, said that he had, for a while, had not even thought about selling the company. But, if he did, it was like, what would that number be? He said it was $500 million. And he didn't know why, but he said, that's no less than that. I'm selling for $500 million.
It's true. I mean, that's not, that's not just one of those stories for story's sake. That was his number from the inception, and we had some folks laugh and say, "There's no way it's worth that much." And as you know, from the venture side, or if it's M&A, you just need one. You just need one person that believes in the value being there. And that company, interestingly enough, Lindsay Goldberg, that purchased Big Ass Fans, has already sold it. And so I think
last year, right?
Yeah. So there was clearly an opportunity for them to come in and implement some of the changes, controls, things that they thought would enhance the value further. And so while at the time people may have been like $500 million for that business, that's wild. There was a lot of value in it. And that's why I say it's a disservice to say it was a story, because there clearly was a tremendous amount of value in the company.
Yeah, man. Definitely. I mean, and I want to kind of dive into a little bit of like the grooming there, like how you talked about how you came in as an intern and, you were in the deal room. So how, what was that like training? Like, what was that, on the job, like training? What type of experiences did you get? Because I mean, being a startup founder, we're very young. Our team is like small right now. It's like a team of like 5 or 6 and, a couple part-time gets us up to around 9 or 10, but like mentoring and, helping, those young employees like cast their vision, but like not like, within your company though, like how do you, do that? And how was that, done for you?
Yeah, I'll give you all the cliches today, but I think failure is a great teacher. I just don't know that there's a substitute for it. And I think what Big Ass Fans did magically was allowed you to fail in a safe environment. So we never set somebody up for a failure that would be catastrophic for the business or for them individually. But if you put some controls around it and give folks some runway and accept that there's going to be some failure, I think that's the toughest thing. Is you can say that I embrace it as a company and as a culture, but if you turn around and slap on the wrist, you're not getting another shot after that, then you're not really living those values. I think that's, when you talk about grooming future entrepreneurs or just, dynamic business professionals, you really do have to give them enough slack to go out there and figure some of these things out for themselves, because most of what I've learned in my career is by getting firsthand practice. I love the idea of mentorship and guidance, and I take all the input I can. But when I think about the skills that I've developed, it's, an analogy is like, somebody can tell me how to be fit and how to exercise, but you really have to go out and push yourself to failure to get those real gains. And I think there's a lot of that in business too. And so there's value in going and sitting in a big organization, certainly, where you can learn best practices. But if you're on a bench where you're, 3 or 4 people deep and you never get to go up there and take your shot, I think there's something missing. And so I encourage, whether it's your first job or second or third, I think everybody at some point should get to be in one of those environments, startup or not, where they're getting that opportunity. And that's what I'm just forever grateful for, that I lucked into it. I mean, I didn't know it was going to be like that my first job was going to expose me to so much. And I now that I know, I'm out there, screaming from a rooftop for people to go find those cultures that allow you to do that, because it's so invaluable.
Yeah, and I think transparency is a huge part of that too. Like, I mean, from a business standpoint, if we tried something this quarter and it didn't work, like, let's be honest with, everyone and tell them. Like, I think that's a huge part. Like you said, the failure is the thing. Like, yeah, showing that this didn't work. All right, let's go back to the drawing board from a company standpoint. I think is great.
Yeah, Carrie always used to say, if it didn't hurt, we won't learn anything from it. And the example I'm thinking of is we would just completely botch something on the customer side, like a bad installation or something like that. And then we paid for everything, and then we'd throw more at them as like gifts. There are all kinds of stories where we went above and beyond for the customer. And it's like, well, you didn't have to do all that. And he's like, no, I need this for it to hurt so that we won't do this again. And so, yeah, there's embracing failure, but there's making sure that you don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. As you kind of talk through the story a little bit of how that came to piece and the deal room together. As you have entrepreneurs maybe looking at a potential exit or acquisition, I know you all put a team together, right? And you kind of talked about splitting roles during that time. Can you kind of go back to that time a little bit? Remember, like maybe a few things that team primarily did, or things that maybe if someone's kind of positioned themselves for an exit or acquisition, things you should be thinking through in putting a team together to work on that process. And it sounds like it was quite intensive through the due diligence and also the internal processes you already had in place. So maybe is there one or two or three takeaways maybe for the beginning that process a startup should be looking at?
Yeah, I think there's definitely phases of it, right? I mean, in the initial engagement, it really is a story. You're just trying to get somebody to show enough interest, and you're putting a robust enough pitch together to have somebody take that next step. Our sort of phase two. So this was the condensed side, I'd say, even through phase two, is getting somebody to believe enough to sign an LOI, which is a big deal because there's real money committed at that point if they walk away from the deal. So that was probably the first 2 to 3 months. And that's really being able to pitch what can there be? What does this future look like? And why should I believe that this company is worth this much and will be into the future? The diligence piece is a totally different beast because now you've locked arms with the partner, but it's like, okay, I'm going to go through every single data point you have, and I need you to be able to answer it from 10 different perspectives. So why did this product get sold to this customer on this day, this year? And what do they think? I mean, the amount of questions that you'll get, because they're trying, at that point, they're not trying to discredit you or disprove. It's not that they don't want the deal to go through, but they need to, before they take ownership of it, have a very solid game plan on how I'm going to realize that value. And so the deal is not done at the LOI stage. And in fact, if you start tanking, they may say, hey, it's worth paying the breakup fee. And so you have to balance that requirement of answering questions, providing data. We spent some time going out and looking at companies that we might buy and pull into it post-acquisition. So you're on the road looking at other businesses with them. And then meanwhile, you have to maintain performance because you're getting questions like, hey, why did sales dip last week? Or, what's going on with this product line? And you have to maintain the business to a certain level of performance so you don't start, causing concern on that end. And then assuming you're going to be with the business, which at the time, the assumption was I and others on the team were still going to be part of the group and the go forward. And I was for a period of time. You're also thinking about, what is my role going to be in this organization? I'm having to now prove myself to a new owner. So you have all these hats. And I can just remember that year was so incredibly stressful because I couldn't talk about it with my wife. She didn't even know what was going on. It wasn't the company didn't know. So none of my employees that reported to me on my team were aware. So you're having, it's almost like you're cheating because you're having to live
CIA almost, huh?
You're living a double life. You really are now. Well, and so you're just having to switch gears all the time. And I think that's why having a good team in place, because you can help one another, you can commiserate, and makes it really important. But I think for startup founders, if you're at that stage where you're looking at that size of exit, you're going to have a good core operating team in place and have no issue putting that together. But you're really, really going to rely on each other through that process because it's going to be taxing.
That's some great information there. Like a lot of tidbits and gems in between there, and also just a really cool story. I mean, like you said, I'm sure it was stressful and challenging during that time and wearing many different hats. But I think the amount of experience I can hear that you came out of that situation really helped and impacted you in your career path in the future, and probably led into a lot easier conversations down the line with Truman. So, kind of curious. I know that deal is a little bit different from Big Ass Fans, but maybe talk a little bit about Truman's and the evolution of the company, which you did first. And you alluded to earlier that the acquisition really didn't come as planned, came a lot earlier than you thought. So maybe how did that even end up happening sooner than your plan and strategy from the get-go?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this a little bit before we even started recording, Chris, but venture-backed companies need to start thinking about potential exit scenarios early. Because when you sign that deal with a venture capitalist or a fund, the expectation is, hey, this is going to create a return on my capital within a certain time horizon, usually a decade or less. And so it's not like Big Ass Fans where it was privately held. He could have passed it down to his son if he wanted to, keep running the business. And you see that all the time. So venture is a different value proposition from an exit standpoint, and we knew that going into it. So one of the calculated decisions that we made very on that I'm grateful for was invested in our own technology. So not a lot of people know this. I'm sure I've talked about it on record before, but when we started it, it was licensed technology, and so really what Truman's was a brand. Right? We didn't own our manufacturing like Big Ass Fans did. We didn't own our technology like Big Ass Fans did. We were purely a brand. You guys know how hard it is to build brand and consumer.
Yes.
There are not many CPG brands that have exited ever because so much of that's controlled in distribution, right? With Walmart and Target and the big boys out there. And not only that, they're starting to introduce more and more of the private label stuff. And so it's very difficult if all you are is a brand and your product is the same as everybody else's. It's also very hard to patent things in the CPG space, in terms of a formula or a mouthwash or a toothpaste or whatever it may be, because I mean, that is not an easy thing to do. And then is there even value in that to the consumer that, okay, your formula is a little bit different. So very early on in the process, we decided we wanted to have some tech as part of our company's value. And so we made those investments early in the process, and we started looking at how do we diversify income streams. So there were two thoughts there. One is it gives us more optionality down the road if we exit. Two, we can potentially diversify our monetization strategy. Direct to consumer, also very challenging. So CPG coupled with e-commerce, where you're almost at the whims of what is the Facebook CPM today, and it's a tough world, and I think all the CPG founders listening to this will understand that. And so we started having conversations with various strategics around licensing deals, around R&D and innovation type projects where we're putting this technology into other form factors. So think, shampoos and things of that nature. Those conversations early on are really what ultimately led us to the exit, because the company that acquired our technology was actually looking at a licensing play with our product before they knew that we were licensing it. So we had ignored the initial outreach because I was like, well, we can't license this. It's not ours. So ignored it. But when we started looking at this diversification model, we were reaching out to different companies. We had a deal in place that was $1 million plus for bringing the products over to Asia. And that was going to be brand plus licensed technology. And then this popped up and was like, well, we'd actually be interested in just owning the whole thing because we want to put it into our brands throughout the world that aren't just consumer cleaning products sitting on a shelf. And so that's the path that we ultimately chose because, like I said, tons of headwinds in the space. We weren't sure where things were going to land. And I think things have only gotten tougher since then. There was a little bit of a pandemic tailwind for e-commerce businesses, but have, sort of come back down to reality, as we see with the, not just CPG, but the Pelotons of the world and all the, kind of pandemic boom stocks. But we didn't plan on that, but I'm certainly happy that we planted seeds, both from a relationship with some of these bigger companies and from a technology standpoint, to give us that optionality to take a deal more opportunistically than we had planned at the charter of the business. Of course, when we started it, we think this is going to be the next billion-dollar brand. It's going to be on every shelf. But I think optionality is something that is key in businesses, not just from an exit standpoint, but your business. But definitely when it comes to exits, think optionality. If you're banking on one outcome, one type of buyer, I think there's risk because the variables can change on you very quickly. And so my experience with Truman's was clearly much, much different than the Big Ass Fans one. I think that was my biggest takeaway from it, was just be prepared for any number of scenarios and within that short window of time, because your investors are going to start to expect that something happens one way or another sooner than later.
Yeah, man. I love that idea, that you said, prepare for that acquisition or the sale, like from the beginning, because oftentimes we start businesses and we just think like, hey, we're going to run this and we're going to exit, but we don't think about the exit strategy or anything from the beginning. So, and you talked about how you we need a set component from the beginning. What does that look like though? Like those relationships, and from a general standpoint, how do you, build those relationships, and how do you begin to diversify those relationships if you're not just looking at, one type of partner to buy you?
Yeah, I think there's the term coopetition comes into play, and I think there's more of that than people think. And I got a call. It's funny timing. I got a call from somebody this week that was in a similar position. They've got some technology in the razor space, and he wanted feedback on, is it too early to start talking to some of these companies? Do I need to show more proof of concept with our own brand? And I think there's very little risk these days from being open and making connections. I think the idea that I've got some secret sauce that somebody's going to rip off and, they're going to go behind my back, and I'm sure that can happen. But when you're in such early stage businesses, they don't care. I mean, you're a tick on an elephant's ass at that stage. And unless you start making noise, they're not going to rip you off. That's when they're going to rip you off. And so I think having the open dialogue and just knowing who one another is, saying, hey, there may not be anything this year, but I'd like to keep in touch, I think is the right way to handle it, because you don't want to have to start from scratch when that time comes, when I start, I think it's time for us to exit, but I don't even, there's no Rolodex, there's nobody I can talk to. And I also think open dialogue leads to unexpected partnerships. I know I glossed over the deal in Asia, but this was a company that looked at investing in our seed round, didn't, but kept in touch. It was the coopetition, very friendly, loved our mission, loved what we were doing, didn't make sense from a strategic investment standpoint. But then they saw an opportunity to, hey, we can shake things up in our Asian market with this new product. We think they'd really love it for these reasons. And so had we not sold, that's a path we were going to that was going to dramatically diversify our revenue stream, just because we, kept in touch with them. If they had passed on our round and we never talked to them again, that may have been a harder door for us to open. So I think getting chummy with competition is not always a bad thing, especially when it's much larger competition. If it's startup to startup, sure, maybe that's not something you want to do. But I think there's too much a concern that the big guys are gonna knock me off when they really just don't care.
Right,
Alex,
tell me about that.
That's such a great point. I'm sorry, Ricky. I was gonna say that's such a great point, Alex. I mean, you're just talking about the piece of networking, and Ricky and I are big components of that. We said networking has got us where we're at today, and continue to build a relationship. It's too many times when I talk to founders where they wait to start raising capital, but they haven't connected with any venture firms at all, have no relationships. And I'm like, go create the relationships. Tell them that you're early, you're not a fit now, and start creating those relationships. Get them on your mailing list, start sending them updates. So when you get ready to raise, they're familiar who you are. They know Alex, they know Ricky, and they kind of know a little bit what you're doing already. Don't wait to do that when you want to raise, because then you realize I think that fundraising cycle is a lot longer then because you have not built those relationships. Build those relationships early on, maintain those relationships, not only like whether it's a partnership side or raising capital. I think that's so key in this business.
100%. It's just more sincere too. If you only call me when you need something, like the odds of me picking up the phone are much lower than if we had a relationship and stayed engaged. But I mean, to your point, so my current role at Vsimple, we've completed a seed round. We're looking at a potential Series A, but we've talked to folks that are way upstream that invest. Their check size is way bigger than we would be able to take on at this stage of our business. But they recognize it and we recognize it that there's value in talking now. It may never materialize, but if we start these conversations, if and when that day comes, well, guess who's going to have a front seat to a potential investment? Us and them. And they want that and we want that. And so be sincere about it. Again, it's not just checking a box, like actually get to know them, share some insights and anecdotes, be helpful if you can, but yeah, don't wait until you need something to pick up the phone and call, because it's probably too late, to your point, at that stage, whether it's M&A or, venture investment or angel investment. Those things can take time.
Yeah, man. I was going to say, like, you were talking about, don't worry about people ripping off your idea. Like, talk about being in the metaverse space when Zuckerberg comes out and says Meta. Everybody's like, oh yeah, Facebook's just going to do what you're doing. I'm like, well, I don't think Facebook's worried about STEM education in the metaverse. But okay, I got you.
Well, and there's almost very few winner takes all propositions either.
True.
We're in the productivity software space. I'm sure you guys could name 1 or 2 dozen productivity softwares that are out there in the world, and we're focused on a different delivery method. So there's always a growing pie. You can create more value and everybody can win, but 2, you can differentiate in lots of ways. It doesn't just have to be from a straight IP standpoint. You can have a different customer experience, a different go-to-market strategy, different features within your product. So I'm, especially early stage, I'm not a huge believer in fixating on what the competition is doing. It's more about like, how can I win with the customers that I'm paying attention to? Maybe when we hit a mature stage, it becomes more about, market share. But for a lot of startup founders, it's not a market share equation until much, much later.
Yeah, really true. Much later. Thinking through the second piece with Truman's, right? I know you and John already came off that, the experience at Big Ass Fans together. So how was that deal done? Was it a lot quicker than was it you and John in the room at that point in time? Were you already think about this? Was it a lot quicker process compared to the first acquisition with Big Ass Fans?
Yeah, and I don't even know that you can call it a process compared to Big Ass Fans, because we only had a couple years of data, and the data was not complex. Our product line was straightforward. Our sell through was all e-commerce. So when I think back to Big Ass Fans, we were multinational. So you got to dig into every office. We have lots of product lines, lots of facilities. Our infrastructure was huge, buildings that were owned by the company. And then, hundreds, if not over 1,000 in staff. And so you got to know what everybody's doing. Way more complicated. We were very straightforward. And so, you're talking 30 to 45 day close versus year to year and a half close.
Well, man, and it seems like it's like you said, it's mostly like diving back through those financials and, the paperwork and getting to know the team. So it's like, you speak to just the importance of making sure that, all those things are in line. And I know, like, with a lot of small businesses running lean, like, what are some strategies for making sure that you keeping that, the operations in line so that you are preparing for, that acquisition?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a great question. And it's probably, I don't know that there's a rule of thumb for every business, but I think just knowing your situation at all times. It's that situational awareness of where are we at as a business? What are our strengths? What are our options if we decide to pursue something like, you talk about your STEM business, who would be a potential suitor? What is it that they would be interested in buying specifically? Is it the customer base? Is it the technology? Is it the team? And if I think it's one of those things more than another, how do I ensure that the team that we've got in place stays in place, or that we continue to invest in the technology? So as the business matures and certain areas start to really be the secret sauce, even if it's not a big secret, it's like, how do I make sure that I've reinforced that, so that if there is an opportunity, that's really what we can go out and shop. Very rarely, especially in an early stage company, is it going to be, I want it for everything. I mean, they may keep it operating, but this is the reason I'm buying it or making an investment, is because I believe this part of the business is really strong and will lead you to win. And so that's, part of the situational awareness is internal, but then also, what is the market value today, and how do I match those things up? Like I said, that's such a big question, because so many, businesses are at different stages and in different spaces that it's each one needs to kind of take inventory of itself.
Oh, I think that's really good though, man, to identify what is the real value, in the business. Like you said, the team, the product, or, the marketing, the customer base or whatever. So I think that is a critical thing to think about, and like think about growing that. I feel like sometimes we get just caught up in the revenue of the business, but it's like, no, just go out and get customers, and like you will get acquired. So like, I think that's great advice.
Look at Truman's. They didn't want the brand. There was no value to the acquirer in the brand to even take it, because for them it was a technology play, because they've invested, millions into their own brands. And if they take it, they're going to have to invest in it. And that's not part of their go forward strategy. So it's more work for them to take that part of it. And so it's like, no, I want to put the technology into the brands we already have. Now, if we didn't have that technology, like I said, if we hadn't made those decisions early on, that company would not have been a potential target for us. And we would have been, shopping to somebody that's looking to build a brand. And at that stage of our business, candidly, the brand was just not that valuable, because we were only a few years in. And you guys know it takes a very long time for a brand in and of itself to have that kind of value. So, it can be customers, it can be talent, it can be tech, it can be brand, it can be all of those things rolled up if you get the perfect storm. And they want it all, and they don't want to touch it. They just want to let you keep running it, but give you a big lump of cash. But I think that's where businesses just have to understand, what is it about us that a potential acquirer would want. And we're having those discussions at Vsimple. Our investors, even though we're early, are forcing us to have those discussions, not because we want to shop it, and we aren't, and we probably wouldn't, but because that will impact our investment decisions, why we think somebody could acquire us. And not everybody's going into starting a business, just to be clear, with the thought of, I want to be acquired. But like I said, if you're in venture, typically there's an expectation of some liquidity event. So start orienting yourself towards, why would a potential business want to own this one day? And it can be a lot of things if it's on the longer time horizon, where it's like, it's a well-oiled machine and I want the whole thing. But what are our strengths that they may find appealing that they don't have today? Because if they can easily do it themselves, then why would I buy that?
Yeah,
that's a great piece you're talking through, because I think there is a lot of early stage founders that potentially, you mentioned earlier, even having that piece kind of in your deck, right? Though it may be a ways away, having that in your mindset a little bit, it does kind of give investors kind of like your vision and your plan. Is it something you want to take to IPO? Is it something like, who's the potential right partners for acquisition or merger? And I think there has been it's often glossed over by founders not thinking that far out, because they're so focused on raising the capital now. But also like that capital should be jet fuel for your engine. And so like, how do you think about, that acquisition? I think it's a good piece, and it's important for founders to really start even diving through and kind of doing the exercise. Because I think the exercise in itself of researching potential partners, it's the same exercise you need to do in order to find the right venture partners anyway. So like, I think it's a great exercise for founders to kind of understand and give more in-depth like knowledge of that industry.
Well, and everything needs to tie, right? If I'm saying that my business is going to be valuable because we do this really well, and then my use of funds is completely disconnected from that, I'm not going to understand the investment thesis if I'm sitting on the other side of the table. And that's part of why the Big Ass Fans deal was so complicated, is because you need to make sure everything ties. The historicals, the current state, what we're saying is possible, and the go forward. If you've got big gaps in, you know, what you've done so far and where you think it can go, then they're not going to believe just not going to have conviction around, you know, that investment thesis. And I think the venture world is the same way, is make sure that you're thinking about the ultimate goal here. And it's a path. It's not saying that like everything's going to be figured out. We certainly don't have anything close to, you know, being completely figured out, but you need to be directionally pointing towards the bigger outcome that you believe is possible. And each round you're putting fuel, like you said, fuel in the jet engine to help get you a little closer to your final destination.
Love it. Well, I mean, it's been great to talk to you today, Alex. You know, I think we're coming up on our time, so I want to kind of close out with some fun hot seat questions for you, and then we love to see how we can stay in contact with you and stay connected.
Love it. Let's do it.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, sounds good. So first one, what's your favorite book recommendation and why?
Factfulness by Hans Rowling. It's the subtitle is something like 10 reasons why things are better in the world today than you think. I think we're mired in negativity. And I think an important thing both in life and in business is to be able to zoom out and look at it over longer periods of time and realize that progress isn't a straight line. It's zigzagged, and business is 100% that way. We're going through that exercise where it's like, well, why wasn't this month as good as last month? But then you zoom out and you look at the quarter, or you look at the year, and it's like, oh, it is improving. We just, you know, it's not linear. So I really like that book because it always puts things in perspective for me.
I love that. I'm gonna check that out. All right, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given, or recent advice that you've been given?
Oh, gosh. Best piece of recent advice. Sorry, I know it's supposed to be quick, rapid fire. Don't allow yourself to get too high or too low.
I live by that. I always say even keel is the way to go.
Yeah, that's me.
All right.
His wife's like, you're not excited? I'm like, yeah, I'm excited.
I am.
Yeah.
Excited inside, right? It's like I'm excited inside.
Yeah.
All right. If you have unlimited money, what will be your ideal getaway or vacation?
Anywhere with my family, man. That's all I need.
Love
Hey,
it.
Ricky and I can relate to that. Yeah, it came up from a family vacation, so that's dope. All right. If you compare any two people to build the ultimate entrepreneur, what two people will you pair?
Real people, I assume. So let's go with, I would pair Michael Jordan with Stephen Hawking. I want the no F's given work ethic that we all saw with The Last Dance paired with one of the brightest minds in the world. Because then I feel like if you put those two things together, anything would be possible.
Yeah, man, I love that.
Man, yeah, that would be dangerous right there. All right, last one. What are your thoughts on the secret sauce to making unicorns?
I think the secret sauce is execution. I think business ideas are a dime a dozen. I think market opportunities are plentiful. I think it's the ability to take signals from the market. Every billion-dollar company has pivoted at one point or another. So take those signals and then execute along the way and continue to do that consistently. So maybe I'm adding consistency and execution in there wrapped in together, but at the end of the day, it really is execution, because I think a lot of times people believe that it's just, you got to have that $1 billion idea and the market's going to pull you through to that huge outcome. And when you go back, and you guys have done this, when you listen to enough founder stories and, you know, company origin stories, it's never that clean.
Never.
No idea is new, man. So that's what I just put it out there.
Yeah. Life is a series of pivots.
Well, we appreciate you, Alex. How can we stay connected with you for those maybe want to reach out to you and get connected with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. I'm most active there. Just my name's easy to spell, Alex Reed, REED. Or you can find me on Twitter. I'm less active there, but I'm on there. My handle's Hey, it's Alex Reed.
Sounds great, man. Really appreciate you today. We love to stay in contact and see your progress over at Vsimple. Let us know if Ricky and I can do anything. We'll always value your time. So much blessings to you.
Yeah, Chris, Ricky, thank you so much for having me on here. Always a pleasure to chat with you guys.